The end of the war was chaos. Streets filled with the ruins of the Reich, the hum of surrender heavy in the air. In May 1945, a weary figure emerged from the collapsing shadows of Hitler's Germany, Field Marshal Erhard Milch. Once one of the most powerful men in the Nazi hierarchy, Milch now stood among the defeated, clutching the last emblem of his authority, a jewel-encrusted baton. Days earlier, he had commanded the German Air Force's industry. Now, captured by British commandos, he faced an entirely different reality. His arrogance and pride collided with the rage of men who had just seen the horrors of Bergen-Belsen. According to accounts, his final humiliation came at the hands of a British brigadier who shattered that baton across his skull, a symbolic blow to both the man and the empire he had served. If stories like this fascinate you, make sure to like this video and subscribe. Ahead lies the story of the man who built and broke Germany's Air Force, the architect of the Luftwaffe, Erhard Milch. Erhard Milch was born in 1892 in Wilhelmshaven, a naval port on the North Sea. His father, Anton, worked as a pharmacist. His mother, Clara Vetter, came from a more comfortable background. Yet even in childhood, questions of lineage would shadow his future. Rumors claimed his father was Jewish, a dangerous suggestion in the world he would later inhabit. That uncertainty required the protection of powerful friends, including Hermann Göring himself, who would one day rewrite Milch's ancestry on paper to preserve his usefulness. During the First World War, Milch began his service as an artillery officer, but soon found his passion in the air. By 1915, he transferred to the Imperial German Air Service as an observer aboard reconnaissance planes, mapping enemy positions high above the front lines. A wound in 1917 ended his flying career, redirecting him to staff work. When the war closed in defeat, Milch was among a generation of young officers unwilling to surrender their connection to flight. The Treaty of Versailles forbade Germany from maintaining an air force, but it could not stop the nation from dreaming. Civil aviation became a loophole, and Milch used it shrewdly. He joined the Junkers Company and later, in 1926, became managing director of Deutsche Lufthansa, Lufthansa. Under his direction, the airline flourished, expanding routes and perfecting logistics. Officially civilian, it served another purpose, a quiet incubator for the rebirth of German air power. When Adolf Hitler rose to power in 1933, Hermann Göring needed professionals who could turn ideology into machinery. Milch, efficient and driven, became state secretary of the newly created Reich Air Ministry. By 1935, Hitler publicly announced the Luftwaffe. Göring was the flamboyant face, Milch, the architect behind the walls. He imposed order and discipline. Production schedules, flight training, and logistics were all meticulously organized. He preferred mass production of proven aircraft, like the Messerschmitt Bf-109 and Heinkel HE-111, over experimental projects. It was a conservative but effective approach. The Luftwaffe expanded rapidly, transforming from a secret force into one of Europe's most formidable militaries by the late 1930s. Milch's methods, however, were not universally admired. He clashed with engineers such as Willy Messerschmitt and often dismissed dissent as disloyalty. His precision became rigidity, his control an obstacle to innovation. Still, he maintained Göring's confidence, at least for a time. The Spanish Civil War provided a testing ground, and Milch watched the Condor Legion's air operations closely. The success of the Stuka dive bomber validated his faith in rapid, coordinated airstrikes. but it also revealed a flaw. The Luftwaffe was designed for short, decisive wars. The outbreak of war in 1939 seemed to vindicate Milch. Luftwaffe squadrons destroyed Warsaw, supported blitzkrieg advances in France, and appeared unstoppable. On the 19th of July 1940, in recognition of his organizational success, Hitler promoted Milch to Field Marshal, a rare honor for a man who had never commanded in battle. But this title marked both his peak and his turning point. The Battle of Britain exposed the weaknesses of his design. The Luftwaffe could not sustain long-range operations, and Milch's focus on quantity over innovation left it unprepared for a drawn-out war. Still, he continued to oversee production as the war widened. In 1941, during the invasion of the Soviet Union, he faced the ultimate test, keeping aircraft flowing to distant fronts across immense territory. His response was to tighten control further, introducing the Jägerstab, or fighter staff, in 1942, a powerful organization aimed at maximizing aircraft output. To meet quotas, Milch turned increasingly to forced labor. Workers from occupied Europe and concentration camps were conscripted into factories under inhuman conditions. Though Milch did not oversee camps directly, his system depended on them. At the same time, his rivalry with Albert Speer, the armaments minister, became a bureaucratic battle. Both sought control over war production, reflecting a fractured economy where personal ambition often outweighed strategy. By 1943, despite record aircraft output, the Luftwaffe was losing the war in the air. Allied bombers struck German industry relentlessly, destroying the very factories Milch depended on. He tried relocating production underground and dispersing facilities, but by then, Allied air superiority and fuel shortages rendered these efforts futile. His clashes with frontline commanders, particularly Adolf Galland, deepened the divide between bureaucrats in Berlin and pilots at the front. As Göring's influence waned, Milch attempted to step forward as a stabilizing figure, but his lack of political charm and growing unpopularity isolated him. By late 1944, he presided over the remnants of the force he had once built. The Luftwaffe, designed for lightning victories, had crumbled under the weight of a total war. When Germany surrendered in May 1945, Milch tried to flee toward the Baltic coast, but was captured by British commandos. Brought before Brigadier Derek Mills Roberts, his arrogance, demanding respect even then, met the fury of an officer who had just seen the aftermath of Bergen-Belsen. What followed became legend. The Field Marshal, symbol of power, beaten with his own baton until it broke. The episode, whether embellished or not, captured a truth. The empire he served had collapsed, and its architects were facing judgment. Unlike Göring, who appeared before the main international military tribunal, Milch faced his own trial in 1946, the Milch case. The U.S. military tribunal examined his role in aircraft production, forced labor, and the human experiments conducted under Luftwaffe authority. Milch defended himself as an administrator fulfilling orders. The judges disagreed. In April 1947, he was convicted of war crimes and crimes against humanity and sentenced to life imprisonment. Yet political winds shifted. In 1951, his sentence was reduced to 15 years, and 3 years later, he was released from Landsberg prison. While other former officials sought public redemption or notoriety, Milch chose obscurity. He settled quietly near Dusseldorf, shunning interviews, refusing to write memoirs. He died in January 1972, leaving behind few words, only records, reports, and the enduring paradox of his career. He was a man who built one of the most formidable air forces in history, yet failed to see its fragility, a master of structure undone by his own rigidity. His story remains not of villainy alone, but of ambition, how the pursuit of order can become blindness when separated from conscience. History remembers the image, a field marshal beaten with his own baton, stripped of ceremony, a mirror to the downfall of an empire. The tools that once built power became symbols of its collapse. If you enjoyed this story, remember to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next journey into the hidden corners of history.